always look for what's missing, not for what you've achieved. But number one thing, ask why is this deal not going to happen? Don't ask why is it going to happen. And AI, and understanding why those gaps appear, what are those gaps and what you should do about them.
Excited to be back for another episode of the Industrial Growth Institute podcast. My guests help me to weave together a really broad spectrum of business ideas and best practices that contribute to revenue growth really across the entire spectrum in terms of predictability and success. We cover topics from board governance and strategy through various marketing, sales, success, and technology issues. But there's a couple themes throughout. One that I really strongly believe that in the industrial space, we can learn from technology. And another is that in my experience, there's significant impact that military veterans and high-level athletes can have on a company. Today's guest brings several of those perspectives. Roi Carmel brings over 20 years of experience in enterprise software with companies of all sizes, early stage, growth, and mature corporates. He's the founder and CEO of Spotlight.ai, a company that has software for what they call autonomous deal execution. We're going to learn more about what that means. He was Chief Strategy Product Officer and CMO at CyberReason, where he helped the company mature and grow from a single product to a category-leading product portfolio. Before that, he held a similar role at Perfecto Mobile that was acquired by Perforce, and he held a number of executive positions at HP Software, leading business development and strategy. He's on several boards and advises and mentors young entrepreneurs. He's also a military veteran. So as we jump in, please do your part to help others benefit from Roi's expertise. Like, share, comment on the episode, and join me, please, in welcoming Roi. Thanks for joining me today, Roi.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So you've had, as we heard in your bio, you've had a number of product marketing, product management, CMO, strategy roles. Now it seems like your product is really a sales product. Do you see deal execution and qualification as a marketing or a sales function? In other words, is Spotlight AI an extension of your previous roles, or is this really kind of a new foray for you?
Okay, so it's a great question to start with. Since I did spend time in multiple practices across my career, at some point mid-career, it became pretty evident to me that unless you feel like you are in sales, you're doing something wrong, regardless of which role you're in.
Amen.
And that I truly believe that. And then what happened was it completely transformed how I build products and how I run marketing and how I'm as an executive in a company, how I fill a role of an executive in the company. At the end of the day, we each have our practice, have our kingdom, have our skill set, our universe, but we're all running a very well-oiled machine with a tip at the front of it, which meets the customer and needs to sell and deliver value to the customer. And
so when you're interviewing a new CFO and you tell them you expect them to be a salesperson, what kind of reaction do you get?
Yeah. So how are our processes, contracts, provisions, interactions of doing business with finance on the customer side, how are those aligned to what the customer would want to see first before we look backwards at what serves us? Because if it serves the interaction with the customer, if we streamline any interaction, financial, legal, security, obviously product and support and customer success, then everything aligns behind that. Just
Right.
Imagine an amazing quarter to the company. Everybody feels they did their job well. A horrible quarter to the company, nobody's happy.
Right. So you experienced this evolution or this moment in your career where suddenly you realized that everything had to come down to sales. What was the trigger moment for you to actually found your company?
So before founding Spotlight, once I became fascinated with not just how you build products and where it's positioned in the company, but also how is that being operationalized on the go-to-market side. I started spending more and more time, not just with R&D on building products, but with sales. Obviously, with customers, I always spent validation time, but with sales, how are they selling the product? How are they messaging the product? With marketing, how are they leveraging our differentiators to drive the right messaging in the right placements? And pretty soon it became evident that the right way for me to become a product executive was not just to build products, but to align the company behind the value proposition, right? And if I can understand where we're strong in selling and where we're strong and weak in marketing, and what's our core differentiation from a technical perspective, I can create that alignment in the company. And that's how I ran my role at Perfecto. That's how I ran the role at HP, as well as Cybereason. And then I started advising a few companies about this, and I saw that everybody is actually extremely challenged with that streamline of creation of value, selling the value, delivering the value. And I started building frameworks manually to help sales operationalize the value proposition into their sales motion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that means understanding which questions they need to ask to uncover the customer need and pain, understanding how to compete when we uncover competition, and how, at the end of the day, how can I create a very easy to use tool set for the rep to be able to pull the right lever based on what they're hearing from the customer and navigate to how they can solve the problem for the customer in a differentiated way, sometimes challenging the status quo of that customer and being able to land the sale, but in a way that will end up delivering the value and what matters to the customer. And I saw that building those frameworks was hard, but even harder was operationalizing them. And everybody had like a great book. I have my playbook, and then 6 months later, that playbook is on a shelf.
Right.
And so how do we move from a playbook in a book on a shelf to a DNA of a company? And after carrying quite a lot of scars on my back, either as an operator on this or as an advisor, and solving these problems with sweat and tears, what happened was AI started maturing in the market, and it became evident that this is a great time to go solve this problem at scale. And this is really what led me to form Spotlight, is to do what I did for the last decade and a half, but at scale to the market.
Got it. All right. So speaking of Spotlight, this term that you use, autonomous deal execution, define that for us.
Right. So when you think about running a deal, running an enterprise deal, and we're focused on B2B enterprise deals.
Right.
Okay. There's multiple activities that are happening either between the seller and the buyer, or between the seller and themselves. They prepare stuff for the next meeting.
Okay.
They try to process what they just heard. Between the seller and their manager, their first line manager, that usually inspects the deal, tries to find gaps in the deal, help them navigate the deal. And then between the seller and first line manager to the executive team that try to understand where the pipeline is, right? And where the pipeline stands. And so there's multiple types of activities that are happening that are extremely manual. Some of them are exciting for the reps. Some of them are extremely boring for the reps, and they hate doing them, and they're lazy doing them for a good reason. And what we decided to do is, just like an autonomous car starts by taking over one activity and then another activity and a third activity, and slowly grows through generations to fully autonomous driving, we decided to create a squad of synchronized AI agents. Each of them specializes in an aspect of the deal. So there's an AI agent that specializes in listening to the customer and matching what the customer is saying to the playbook of the company, understanding what the pains are, what the use cases are, who is the competition, who are the right personas to talk to and map, what kind of activities have been done with those personas, what dates are relevant for the deal, and how to create the proper timeline based on your historic timelines and wins and losses. So that's a listening agent.
Okay.
And then there's a coupling, an agent that couples with that agent that turns that data from transcript and snippets of text to what we call structured data. and this is a unique capability that we have, we don't keep the listening output as text. We actually map it to an internal model that we've built. And the model really mimics or models an enterprise sales motion with your specific playbook on top of it as a company. We have a third agent that constantly inspects the deal and tries to find gaps in the deal. Whether you're using a qualification framework, well-known framework like MEDDPICC or BANT or Sandler or SPICE, doesn't matter which one, the agent will constantly inspect the deal and then guide the rep on where the gaps are and what they need to focus on for their next meeting. If one of the gaps is, for example, creating an asset, let's say we identified a competitor, we want to come with the right competitive slide for the next meeting, or we've identified a few metrics that are enough to create an initial business case of how much value we can bring to this customer. We have an additional agent that actually builds those decks for you. So we generate the PowerPoint decks, the Google Slides, the Excels that help you bring an asset that's customer facing to your next meeting. And so with time, we're adding more and more agents to the squad. And this is literally like a military squad that works hand in hand together. Each one knows exactly what they're doing. The most recent agent we've added is a debrief agent, that you can debrief the agent on what happened. Let's say you're at a coffee shop, you have a conversation with a customer. On the drive back, you call the debrief agent, you tell them how the meeting was, just like you tell your manager. It captures everything, updates the CRM, understands where the next gaps are, and guides you on what you need to do next. Or it can brief you on where the opportunity is. So this is really what autonomous deal execution means. And I think we're heading into a world, just to finish with that, we're heading into a world where we need to look at the salesperson as 360 person that has analytical capabilities, emotional capabilities, social capabilities, and we're trying to completely drive the analytical piece of the sale to be as autonomous as we can, so they can focus on politics and relationships and building trust and driving the right, navigating the organization in a way that AI will have a harder time doing in the short term.
So you don't see the human element of sales going away?
No, 100% no, not. But when you look at, I'll take another analogy. When you look at fighter pilots today, fighter pilots of today or in the next 5 years are very different than 10 years ago.
Sure.
Flying an F-35 is different than flying an F-16. And so you become, in a way, more of an orchestrator of autonomous systems rather than just an operator by yourself on every activity.
And you're talking about finding gaps in the MEDDPICC qualification framework. Will your agent actually bump deals back in terms of qualification when it finds those gaps and the answers aren't there, or does it just flag them and encourage the rep to go find those answers?
Yeah, so it does a few things. So first of all, it's breaking down each of those letters to a lot of signals that
Right.
make up this letter, because this is how we work as humans, right? We don't get on a call and ask somebody, "Are you going to be my champion?" Right? You have a call with them, and you find their title, and you find whether they have access to the person with a budget and how much influence they have, and is their sentiment the right sentiment analysis that you're doing emotionally in your head. And so we're operated by a set of predefined signals. And so we've actually built those signals into the model. And what Spotlight does, it picks up on all these signals, puts them together, calculates a score for each persona in specifically around champion or EB, but calculates every letter as a score. And then it tells you, have you completed, or are you on the right track compared to where you are in the deal? If you decide to ignore the score and move the deal forward, Spotlight will basically raise a red flag and start taking away points from your probability to win based on your historic wins and losses patterns. So we can know, for example, that if you've skipped, in the I of identify pain, and you're going into a POC, most likely, you're going to fail the POC if you don't know what the pain is. But let's take a weird example of let's assume you've actually found out the pain later on in a non-formal way, and it wasn't recorded, it was never updated, the debrief agent never heard about it, and you've had a successful POC, and now you're in contracting. Spotlight knows that the importance of that letter is different in that stage than it is in POC. And so it constantly adjusts your probability to win based on really how much have you taken down your probability to win and lose across the team based on those gaps.
Now, in the industrial space, let's say a middle market industrial manufacturer that's selling capital equipment is not going to have nearly as many transactions as an enterprise size tech company. So does this work if you don't have a massive library of transactions that you can refer back to for reference?
Yes. We start with a well-defined B2B sales motion that gets you probably at between 80 to 90% repeatability across B2B. As long as we are dealing with a B2B transaction that is more than a month or a month and a half of a sales cycle.
Right.
I mean, if you're completely transactional, you have one call and you sign a deal, there's less signals, will be less valuable. But if the transaction includes multiple interactions with a customer, multiple personas at the customer, so you're starting to deal with a complex sales cycle, yes, there is a huge layer of repeatability of an enterprise sales motion. Above that layer, there's a layer of an industry repeatability, regardless of who you are, which company you are. And above that, there's your specific pattern. So you're looking at 3 levels of patterns, basically.
All right, so let me kind of say back what I think I'm hearing from the perspective of the industrial world. We don't use, common tech buzzwords like revenue bow tie and all that kind of stuff. So we're really talking the fact that forecasts are a major challenge. And if I understand you correctly, you're basically saying that you can use AI to observe sales rep and customer interactions, map those to the sales process and milestones, and determine the degree of qualification. Is that a fair recap?
100%. And the way to look at it is we've created a full traceability link all the way from your quarterly pipeline to your individual opportunity that requires help or has some gaps,
right,
to an individual stage in the deal, to a qualifier letter, to an activity or a question you've asked, to the exact sentence that was said on a Zoom call or a team call or an email. And we can really tell you what you need to change to move that deal from yellow to green all the way up to the pipeline.
So I get why a sales manager would like it. I understand why a sales rep might or might not like it, but help me push the dots close together. Why should a CEO or CFO care about this?
Okay, so first I want to answer about the rep. Reps, as we know, they just love to fill in Salesforce with data. That's their favorite activity of doing when they wake up in the morning. And so obviously this is going to take away completely the need for reps to do work for the sake of their managers, not for themselves, because they update CRMs not for their sake, right? In order to be able to run a company. And so taking all of that work away from them and making sure there is full data hygiene in what they do is already huge time saver for them. Saving them creating decks and business cases for their customers, many of them don't do it. Either they don't know how to do it well, or it takes dozens of hours to create it. And so we have an average savings of 40 hours per business case for one single business case. And that's only one asset you create across an opportunity. So
on the other hand, they want to be able to stuff their pipeline full of deals. And if this is saying, yeah, good try, except this is not 80% likelihood, this is 30% likelihood, and you've got all this work you need to do before it really belongs in your pipeline, they might not be such fans of that sort of accountability and discipline.
So I like to say that when reps have bad behavior of stuffing their pipeline with deals that will end up wasting their time, they're actually driven by the organization to create garbage for the organization.
I think that's fair.
Right? So a good manager actually doesn't push their team to have more opportunities than they should.
Right.
A good manager understands the depth that you need to drive into each opportunity and manages the coverage into that. But what Spotlight does, it actually tells you you're going to waste your time on this opportunity. And we know it because we've seen it in previous patterns. And here's why. And we're giving you the information on why. So in a way, I would love for somebody to tell me, stop this task you're doing right now. It's going to be a waste of time. Nothing's going to come out of it. Versus others where you should spend more time because there's actually very good opportunity that things will come out of it. And so, knowing where to spend your time will end up with you making more money as a rep. So that's on the rep side. Going back to the CEO, CFO. So there's a very, I just had actually a series of 3 conversations with CFOs in the last few weeks for a different reason, not for a product reason, but I also showed them the product. And one of the things they said is, at the end of the day, there is always 2 types of reports that are pushed up to the board. There's the CRO report that basically shows where we are in the quarter, but there's also the CFO projection on the year and the quarter. And CFOs want to have evidence. One of the key problems with CFOs, they did not hire the sales team. They are not in every sales meeting. They don't have the gut feeling that Joe is a bullshitter, but Anne actually is solid and brings in everything she says.
Right.
And so they look at the data, not being able to judge it properly, and having that evidence with traceability from pipeline all the way down gets them to build their own credible projection. And so that's huge for CFOs. Okay. For CEOs, what we're doing is we're actually not just creating better reporting and visibility, but because we're relying on evidence, we actually can analyze what's our winning patterns, what's our ICP, where should we focus the company to drive better results versus where we should stay away from. And so from a strategy perspective of a CEO, seeing that a certain combination of a use case, a pain, and a competitor with a certain industry drives faster deals, bigger deals, but when you change one parameter there, your win rate is cut to 2 in half.
Right.
That's huge for a CEO.
Yeah, certainly that's your product and strategy perspective, looking at how you can interpret that data.
It drives product strategy. It drives marketing strategy.
Right.
Where should we be placing our brand?
Right. So based on your experience and based on watching Spotlight work on lots of opportunities for your business and for other businesses, what would you say is the major cause of unrealistic pipelines? Is it happy years from salespeople? Is it failure to ask key questions? Is it failing to understand the information they actually need? Do you have any sense of what the most common reason is?
Yeah, I would say maybe 2 reasons. Happy years is definitely something we all sin, right? And we're optimistic people because we want to win.
Right.
And when we want to win, we're looking to hear something, and we're
confirmation bias.
Exactly, adjusting reality to what we're looking for. And so you need a lot of experience to sort of detach yourself from that optimism and be able to look at reality as it is and find out the gaps. We're a few co-founders. One of the things we do is we do it to each other always. Mm-hmm. So we put reality in front of each other because we know, and we ask for that. So we go to the other and say, here's what I'm seeing. What am I missing? Right. And so that's something that you learn along the way. But most people, definitely in the first years of selling, have a lot of happy years.
Sure.
You see a happy persona in front of you. They love the product. They love the demo. You're like, oh my God, I got this deal. This is amazing. Then you have no idea that this person has no influence in the account, and you're not even talking to the right person.
Right.
So this is one reason. The second reason is, again, due to optimism, we rush deals. We see a problem, we want to go give a solution.
Right. We
think our solution is always the answer, right? Because that's all we have in our bag. We have this solution. So what else are we going to do? And the result is skipping the deep dive discovery, which is a lot about the customer and not about your product.
Right.
I like to quote, Keith Butler, who's a great CRO, that probably learned this from John McMahon, that said, your product has no inherent value, right? The only value that your product has is when it's tied to a customer pain.
Right.
And a customer
I
use.
would say tied to not the pain, but to the problem and the outcome.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was saying that the use case and the pain. Yeah. So the outcome, 100%. And so in order to get there, you need to slow down
Right.
the discovery, right? And one of my favorite books, The Qualified Sales Manager from John McMahon, it's saying slow down to speed up.
Right.
You have to slow down, and this is a, almost 99% of the cases of either new reps or non-experienced reps is, okay, I got it, I understand what the issue is, let's run for a POC.
Right.
Like that's the immediate response. And then what happens? The deal gets derailed. You didn't find out the strategic objective of the company to tie to that personal pain.
Right.
You didn't map out the different influences in the account, and so that's definitely the second reason, I would say.
Yeah, I talk in the industrial space often about how there's actually 5 buying decisions along the way. First, there's a decision to invest resources in exploring the problem and solutions. And if a company isn't willing to put an engineer, in the case of capital equipment or something, on it for a week to dig into it, there's no project. Then there's the decision, is the division president or the plant manager or whoever actually going to request capital to fix the problem? And sometimes they won't. Even if there's a clear problem, a clear outcome that they could achieve, there just are too many projects. They're not going to request capital, or they don't want to sacrifice their social capital to do that. Then the decision is the company going to approve capital? Then the decision about how is the vendor selection process going to be run? And then finally, the fifth decision is the vendor selection. But we all tend to think of number 5, that vendor selection, as the goal of the sales reps. And so if it's possible to really back up, slow down, as you say, and make sure that we're really qualifying around the business problem and the business outcome or the strategic objective, and understand what stack rank priorities might be coming ahead of it, regardless of what we think the ROI is, then there's a huge opportunity for this to not only improve the forecast, but improve the accountability to the sales process as well. Do you agree?
100%. When if you have a buddy that has like a complex problem in their life, and they tell you, hey, let's grab a beer. I need to get this off my chest. I want to, and you go and grab a beer with them on a bar. Are you suggesting a solution after 5 minutes, or are you there to understand what they're going through? Ask some questions to figure out how you can help. What is he trying to achieve? What is he trying to get?
Right.
So when we're not in a selling mode, we're actually much better at listening and finding out what the problem is.
Right.
Where we're in a selling mode, we forget that we're here to solve a problem and not sell. And so I think that is exactly the type of sort of mindset that gets you to bring the process and the interaction to a much more committed interaction to, okay, we're both here to solve this problem. It's a complex problem. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out that we understand the problem at all of its levels.
Right.
And then there's a lot more commitment on both sides to go solve this.
You mentioned earlier all the personas across a buying team, and the buying teams can easily be 8 or 10 or more people. Can you do this in parallel for all of the different buying roles? So you're doing it kind of individually per persona as well as in aggregate for the company?
It depends. The answer is sometimes you would parallelize the different personas,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you would want to work through your champion to get to those personas.
Right.
At the end of the day, a strong champion is one of the most important things to drive the deal, and you don't want to go around the champion if they're not ready for it yet. And so as you're discovering the different personas, you're also building your champion, and it's two things that are happening in parallel. So in some cases, you might say to your champion or your potential champion, hey, it sounds like I need to go talk to this person. Do you mind if I have this conversation while we're working on this thing? And they'll say no. No problems, go do it. But in other cases, you might sense that it's best to say, hey, we should go talk to this person. I'll follow your lead. When is the right time for us to talk to this person? Because because that the person who is being built to become a champion is putting their name on the line,
Sure.
and you're constantly managing the internal discussions and politics of the organization. 80% of the conversations about you as a vendor happen when you're not in the room,
Right.
right? And so you think you're in control of the conversation, but you're actually not in control of most of the conversations. So you need to orchestrate, right? Not operate, but orchestrate not just the meetings you're in, but the meetings that you're not in. And some of those will dictate how much can you span out quickly to the different personas and do this in parallel.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm also, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the Jolt effect, that the book that came out a couple of years ago by the folks that did Challenger Sale. And essentially what it highlights is that the increase in deals ending in no decision is often a function of indecision. And there are certain clear indicators that they've identified along the way. Have you tried building any of that Jolt effect sort of criteria or red flags into your tool to listen for those?
Yeah, so again, part of identifying the pain, right, the I, is not just to understand what the issue is, but why is it so critical to solve it, and why is it critical to solve it now, and what is the implication of not solving it now, right? And that gets you into the M of MEDDPICC, the metrics to quantify what
Right.
it means not to solve it now. And unless you get to an understanding with a customer that, either their current situation is not sustainable and it's breaking right now, or you're proving that there is a trend of the pain that they're experiencing to get larger and larger to a point where they're not going to be able to handle it, or there is a compelling event. Right, compelling event could be an audit
Right.
or something that really sort of creates a decision and an enforcement for decision. Unless you're able to map that to the pain, then there's always more urgent things to do, right? And so part of what you're trying to always do is, why is this going to be the number one, maybe number two thing that your budget owner
Right.
cares about? And if the budget owner doesn't think this is number one, number two, guess what? He's going to first spend time and money on his number one, number two before he spends time on your solution.
Right.
So it has to do with two things. One is tying in the the urgency, but also attaching it to a strategic objective beyond usually the individual contributor that is feeling the pain that you're talking to.
Of course. Right. I follow Kevin Dorsey. He goes by KD on LinkedIn, and he has a great deal qualification checklist that he uses with his reps, and I think he coaches people on how to use it. In your experience, if somebody's using Spotlight AI, do they need a deal qualification scorecard, or is that just inherently embedded in the way the tool is working?
So the platform is agnostic to the scorecard or framework that you choose to work with. We have out of the box frameworks. We basically took the most common frameworks in the market.
So you start with MEDDPICC, right?
MEDDPICC is the number one. So that's a template that's out of the box available.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're a Sandler or a Spiced or a Band company, or you have your own, we're working with companies like Great Demo that have their own framework that they train on. Then you would implement that framework on Spotlight, and it would be exactly the same as MEDDPICC, but your qualifier, we call them qualifiers. Each of those letters is a qualifier, but your qualifier gates will be the ones that you choose. So the platform itself is agnostic, but it has the out-of-the-box templates for the known frameworks.
And it's easily customizable?
Yes. Yeah, very easy. I mean, it's switching a framework is 5 minutes.
In a lot of the case of my clients and the kinds of companies that listen to this, there may be multiple projects going on. So let's say you've got a global director of engineering who's involved in 4 or 5 different opportunities, maybe at different plants. How does your AI parse out which opportunity a conversation may be about, or which question and answer within a conversation might be about which opportunity?
Yeah, so we call it opportunity matching to a call. Without getting too technical and too much into details,
Sure.
let me actually ask you, how if you are invited to a call and you know about these opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
how would you match them? How do you get on a call and match that call to the opportunity? Well, first of all, you look at who the people are on the call, right? And you'll match them to the contacts in that opportunity. Sometimes there's the same person in multiple opportunities, but there are others that are not.
Right.
So you might have one person who's multiple opportunities, but another person who is just in this opportunity. So you can match it based on that. And then if that doesn't work, if you have two people, they're both of them are in two opportunities in the same account, which is, by the way, usually not the case. You're talking about pretty rare cases, because then they'll merge the sales motion into one opportunity. But let's assume that's the case. Then the context of the call will tell you which one you're talking about. And because we listen to the calls, one of the signals is also serving the call matching. We have a matching success rate of above 90%.
Really?
Between calls and opportunities. And if some call did not match, it's pretty easy. You're getting a notification, this call wasn't matched. We see these 3 opportunities that are possible matches. Can you just click on the right one? Boom, you click on it.
So you're proactively prompted.
Yes.
Got it. I'm thinking about close rate, and companies in my world don't do a great job tracking close rate. And some of it's because of how cumbersome CRM can be, but a lot of it's also because if you look at close rate, you've got a very clear numerator, the number of deals you close. The denominator ends up widely varying. I mean, what's a deal that belongs in that denominator? Is it a qualified opportunity? Is it somebody that's asked for a quote? Is it somebody where you found pain? It feels to me like if we're bringing this rigor to qualifying opportunities, then we can substantially increase the accuracy of our close rate. Have you seen that?
Of course. And we have case studies published from our customers with quotes about closing rates improving by up to 22%. And within the first sales cycle of adopting Spotlight.
So do you think that close rate's going up because we're getting rid of crap out of the bottom? Or is the close rate going up because we're getting better at closing deals?
It's both.
Okay.
But it's if you have huge amount of garbage in your pipeline, then the close rate might not go up because we're qualifying out a lot of deals that are marked as close lost. However, we also measure time to close lost. And one of the things we're showing you is that you've shrunk the time to qualify out deals.
Got it.
So if you've shrunk the time to qualify out, but you haven't increased your win rate, you still are actually spending more times on the ones you win.
Right.
And with time, if you qualify better, it will increase your win rate. Another surprising KPIs is a sales cycle. So in many cases, we speed up the sales cycle because we don't get you stuck to go back to gaps, right? We help you close gaps where they happen. However, we saw with one of our customers that initially we slowed down their sales cycle by 10%. And then we analyzed this, which was weird for us. And we saw that we actually slowed down stage 1 and 2. And this is because they started doing discovery properly. And so we asked them and they said, well, we are doing all this work with a customer. We didn't used to do this work with a customer. And the result was their win rates were dramatically higher.
Right.
And
so back to your point about slowing down to speed up.
Exactly. So we need to be smart about these KPIs to understand is the movement of the KPI, whether it's positive or negative, is actually serving my objective,
right,
and aligning the operation to be more and more efficient rather than just, this thing went up, this thing didn't go up as much as I wanted. And we're doing that analysis with our customers.
Now, how about environmental factors? I'm wondering, can you, this is on the roadmap, to create an agent that will, for instance, crawl news and 10Ks to look for things like layoffs or leadership changes or board changes or strategy announcements or other kind of meta level items that could shift the background premise on which a deal is qualified? Have you incorporated anything like that?
Yeah, so you're talking about specific things that we're already working on. Today, we identify contacts and we can qualify those contacts either as a champion or economic buyer or influencer. The next step is to really qualify the contacts prior to the first call,
Okay.
and be able to understand who is invited to the call, go get the information about this person, understand if you have joint connections, understand if you have joint interests. So prepare you to build rapport with that person, and get onto the call as ready as possible. Analyzing 10Ks is also part of the first prep call. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually not hard to do. Just take a 10K, upload it to ChatGPT, ask it a question, and see how easy it is.
Right.
10K are pretty structured. They're not unstructured data. They're actually pretty structured. And so doing an analysis of a 10K is not really difficult to do. What's interesting is how can we connect the public information to the seller, right? If I get on a call and somebody was at HP Software during the time that I spent at HP Software, the first 5 minutes of the call, we just talk about that and we build a lot of trust. So if I can save time in analyzing this prior to the call and be able to come in hot on
Right.
this, it's a huge help.
Yeah, I think about the times though that deals were, at the point where we're told, yes, the PO is going to be written. We just need to let it go through that process. And then suddenly there's an M&A transaction, or there's a new CEO, or, there's an announcement of tariffs, or whatever the case may be, that, what was really very legitimately qualified and supposed to close now gets put on hold or gets shelved. Um, it would be neat if there was some way to have a feed of the kind of information that might impact the deal likelihood, and maybe even offer some suggestions on whether that enhances or detracts from the likelihood of close.
100%. I agree, and there's definitely repeatable events like M&A, new executives coming on board, that will have a pattern on deal qualification.
Right.
I think it's spot on. It will become part of the first meeting prep. We have an opportunity now with a prospect. Maybe next time we talk, I can disclose the name. But the prospect just got acquired, okay, and it's a pretty large acquisition. And so immediately we thought, okay, the deal is going to derail, right? The prospect is just getting acquired. But very easily, you could see that the actual impact on the team and systems will happen within a year and a half, and that's we found this information pretty easily,
Mm-hmm.
and so that gives us a good understanding that the deal should not get impacted most likely. And then we had a conversation with the prospect and we validated this was indeed the case. So 100%, I agree with you. It's critical information. It's important. It's not hard to do, and it's part of the first meeting prep.
Now, you founded this AI-based company and product back in February of 21. That was nearly 2 years, I think, before the first public version of ChatGPT. And so that makes me wonder, number one, what kind of reception did you get from prospects? Were they thinking AI the way you were, or was it still, beyond their radar? And secondly, as AI is changing so quickly, how frequently are you iterating your vision of what's potential for you to do with the product?
Amazing. So I like to say we've been in conversational intelligence when it was called NLP. And so there wasn't conversational intelligence. There was NLP,
Right.
natural language processing. And one of the founders is an NLP veteran. Our CTO Alec Belfair is an NLP veteran. Did NLP for 20 years. And so we came in with a big vision. You have a call with a prospect. You're being guided on what to focus on. The call ends. You have all the assets you need for the next call, and all the systems are updated, and you're being directed to what are the next steps in your next meeting. Boom. That was the vision back then, and people thought we're hallucinating. I have to say that the people I stayed in touch with are the ones that really saw the vision, and one
Right.
of them told me from day one, they said, "You're actually building the salesperson of the future." And I said, I think you're taking it very far. But the more I thought about this, it became evident. Like this is this, the squad of AIs is going to take more and more of the activities. What I think is becoming evident is even at the pace that we're moving, I think as long as there is a human buyer on the other side, there's a role for a human seller. Right. Once there's no human buyer on the other side, we're going to have a different discussion. But when there's a human buyer, there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of relationships building aside to analyzing the deal and qualifying.
But there are still human buyers, but buyers are increasingly using AI on their side. I see that now. Maybe it's just because I've got this kind of recency bias where I believe that extraordinary human salespeople deliver extraordinary value. But I believe that if you have a team of second standard deviation sales talent, they will still be able to add value. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the buyer journey or the buyer future, which we're talking less about here, is a whole different conversation on the other end, which will impact the seller's future. Right. So the more AI driven the buyer will become, the less the decision will be based on human trust and more on value and analytical decisions. By the way, even moving from face-to-face meetings to Zoom meetings has already transformed us from people who spend 10, 15 minutes together before the meeting starts, right? We're meeting in the lobby, we're walking to the meeting room, we're having maybe coffee on the way or a cup of water on the way. We sit down, we wait for Joe to come in. There's a lot of time to build a relationship. You get on a Zoom, within 3-4 minutes, you're starting to talk about the meeting.
Right.
And so the transition to value-driven conversations from relationship-building conversations has happened. Has started already when we moved to Zoom, and AI is accelerating it.
I would argue that means that we have to do a better job, particularly in marketing, of building trust, and long before in the pre-awareness stage.
I completely agree. You've also asked about how fast do we change our vision?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we moved on the product side. This is a product discussion. From we used to say you need to constantly understand where the puck is going to be, right? Not where the puck is now, where the puck is going to be, and be able to foresee, where the market is, not oversee, so that you don't, overreach into where the market is at, but understand where the right timing and what's going to happen in a year from now, 2 years from now.
Sure.
I think that the conversation changed. The conversation moved to, if we can imagine this could be done with AI, it will be done with AI faster than we think. And unless you're being that aggressive, you are missing the market. And so it's not anymore about what's going to happen in the next year. Is this a task conceptually we think AI could do, even not today?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is yes, then let's assume it's done.
Right.
And build to that reality. And unless you're able, the amount of times we built things and then immediately switched to a new technology stack because the problem got solved in a different way, which was better, is a constant, repeatable occurrence on our journey. And so at a certain point, we understood we have to move from projecting a year out, 2 years out, to making crazy assumptions that things will get done.
That must be exhausting as a CEO.
It's, it keeps you, I think, sharper on what's your core differentiator. Because, when it takes time to build for everyone,
right,
that even a weak differentiator can hold you for 2-3 years. When the pace is so crazy, unless you have a really strong architectural differentiator, you can't really depend on any functional feature-based differentiation, because that's going to go away immediately.
Right.
And so I think it sharpens you in understanding what's the core architectural differentiator of the company, and how do you build the vision and the future of the company based on that. And any plan that you have on the product, you're asking, how is it tied to my core differentiator? Because if it's not tied to my core differentiator, somebody else is going to copy it immediately.
All right. So as you're talking about these kind of the vision and strategy and the direction of your thinking and the direction of the company, in my mind, I keep coming back to thinking about the fact that you're an archer. And it makes me think of all of these memes where people try to draw on archery and target shooting and apply business lessons from it. Or do you, being in the middle of both, do you see any legitimacy to that, or is that just a contrived sort of a comparison that people make?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think I'm seeing different things than somebody who doesn't shoot archery.
Okay.
But it transformed my life, just like judo did. I did judo for the first half of my life, and then added archery when I became too old. And so at the end of the day, I think it's not new. Founding a company, being a CEO, even any executive role, you get hit in the face over and over and over again,
Right.
right? And what's amazing about archery is the only person to compete with is yourself. It doesn't matter who you're shooting against; you're actually competing against yourself.
Right.
And and you fail just like you fail in life. You fail in archery, right? But here's what's really special about archery. If you made a mistake and the arrow went, either outside or you hit one or two instead of the 10 bullseye, the next arrow has nothing to do with the previous arrow.
Well, that's mental toughness.
Exactly. It's a completely new arrow.
Right.
And you are now so enraged because of the mistake you made with the previous arrow. But the next arrow doesn't care about that. And so if you learn how to quickly analyze what went wrong and then immediately put it behind you, but put it behind you in a way that you're completely detached to it.
Right.
Right. And shoot the next arrow completely anew, that's a huge achievement.
Do you still spend some significant time shooting archery?
I do. Yeah, I have my own target in my yard, and I sometimes I take it into other places. But yeah, but just to add to the last one, even more difficult is when you put it behind you and you pull the bow and look at the target, you still see that freaking arrow that went wrong. And now you need to completely ignore it, and literally not see it,
right,
and shoot the next one. And so this is the biggest thing that that makes me practice.
But I think that point about practice, I absolutely come back to sales on that. I mean, I think about, take Cristiano Ronaldo. As fabulous as he is, he still needs to do warm-ups and drills and practice and be coached and work on every aspect of his game, just the way somebody with a fraction of his skill level would. And it's the same with sales. Great salespeople have to continuously practice. And so then that, as I was thinking about our conversation, that led me to another thought then on Spotlight. If putatively what we're doing is qualifying deals to make sure the forecast is accurate and salespeople are doing the right things, the flip side is, as we find gaps, then that becomes fodder for coaching. We understand no matter how good somebody is, there's going to be gaps. Let's identify those, not to bust people's balls, but to say, hey, you're at 98% of what you could be doing. Let's get you to 99%. Let's role play this. Let's practice this. Let's talk about why this happened. Let's get better at this piece. Have you seen companies use it that way?
Yeah, 100%. So I think the best MEDDPICC teams, they use MEDDPICC to not to focus on what has been done, but to focus on what's the risk.
Right.
Where is the risk that you're missing? You're constantly looking to what's going to block or lose your deal.
Right.
If you're looking at what's going to drive your deal, you're completely missing the
That's
idea.
the happy years.
And that's the happy years.
Right.
Exactly. And so the whole mindset is, where are my gaps? What didn't I cover? Who's gonna pull a fast one when I'm not there and get my deal either blocked or derailed or lost? And more importantly, when you lose the deal, after you lost the deal, being able to analyze what went wrong in the deal, right? What actually did you miss? Right? Analyze the failure. Get bummed by the failure because it's human. Don't brush it off. Like, be angry at the fact that you missed it, and then promise yourself that tomorrow this thing is going to be behind you and you're going to pull the next arrow. And when we lose a deal, everybody loses deals. When we lose a deal, we almost like force ourselves to get bumped that day because you need to mourn. Otherwise, the scar is not deep enough,
Right.
and you don't learn for the next day. But then put it behind you, move on, get to the next era.
So it sounds like you mentioned your judo, and I mentioned at the beginning that you're a veteran. I believe very strongly. One of the things that I've found through this podcast, but also my personal experience, is that former NCAA athletes and military veterans bring an intensity and a perspective and a resilience and a mental toughness that can help them really excel. Tell us a little bit about your military experience and how your athletics and military background have made you a stronger leader.
Yeah, so I think um, served the military, was led a team in special ops, and then did judo for 20 years. Not well, started judo way before that actually as a kid, and then into my adult years. Um, at the end of the day, if I the one thing I think, or the top thing I took away um, in terms of leading people, it boils down to one single thing. And when I'm being asked, like, what is leadership all about for me? It's all about trust. It's the one thing. If you don't have trust, you can't lead.
Right.
If you have trust, you can lead. And then everything else comes on top of it, right? Understanding how to figure out what makes people tick and what moves people and what motivates people. Like, everything is above that. But if you don't know how to build trust, nobody ever will follow you.
Right.
And building trust now can be unpacked to really how genuine are you, right? How resilient are you? Because if you're not resilient, people don't trust you either.
Sure.
And so you can break this down to what do I need to have to build trust. But at the end of the day, this is the key point, and I'm happy to say, extremely rare statement. Since the beginning of Spotlight, we had zero churn of people.
Really.
So the core team that started is still with us, and we've added people. We have no one left, and so this is my best KPI for the company.
Do you try to hire veterans yourself?
I've hired several veterans. It's not the only KPI, but I hire genuine people. If I look at in the eyes of the person and I can't see what's behind them, I most likely won't hire.
Right. You got a lot on your plate. You're a CEO, you're a founder, you're a husband, you're a dad. How do you juggle all that stress? I'm always interested in how people manage that.
I shoot archery.
So that really is an outlet for you.
Yeah, it calms the brain. It's basically, if you think about anything but the arrow that you're shooting, then it's not going well.
You leave your phone inside when you're doing that?
You leave everything. You have to literally, if you're in the wrong mindset, if something bugs me, I'm not going to shoot well.
Right.
And so it almost forces you to slow down your brain waves, right, and not think about anything.
So it's like a form of meditation almost.
It is. Yeah.
And you also mentor young entrepreneurs through the IAC Edge. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so I mean, I was very, very lucky in my career to have amazing leaders and amazing mentors. Some of them I made them my mentors; they don't even know it. People like George Kadifa at HP, John McMahon, Tom Schodorf, amazing leaders I've been able to work with, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without them.
Right.
And so it's just fair, when you become a parent, you understand it's all about the next one, right? Not you. And so we're focused. It's a program I volunteer and I chair for young professionals in their 20s, mid 30s, trying to give them an edge, basically, in the world. And we collected a bunch of executives in the Boston area, CEOs, C-level executives in large companies, partners in VCs, entrepreneurs, who are all volunteering their time, and created a mentorship program for these young people. and they're basically getting access to a set of executives, local executives. They have a mentor that's tied to them, but they can access any of the mentors for anything they need. And we also have events with them, sharing with them, dilemmas we've had, failures we've had,
Right.
and so they get. I wish I would have gotten that much access. I was very lucky with my mentors, but so much access to executives at this early age is amazing, and it's just I'm happy. I'm happy to give my time there and be too busy because of what I'm.
Now, we met through another community. We met through Pavilion. One
Right.
of the interesting things about Pavilion is it's so heavily focused on tech. And there's a lot of CMOs and CROs. I think there's fewer CEOs like yourself in that role, and there's certainly not a lot of industrial folks in the organization. Would you encourage these young entrepreneurs that you're talking to consider joining Pavilion? What are your thoughts on the value for people interested in trying to grow businesses that they might get out of
Yeah.
Pavilion?
First of all, I'm pretty new. I think
We both are.
we both are, right. So I've been only in like one real event and one small one, and I couldn't say anything but good things about Pavilion so far. Again, just the beginning, but I've gotten design partners for a new capability we're developing. I've made connections. We met there. And I think it's a great platform for, especially for startups, but even executives in larger companies to network.
Right.
What I really believe is that AI is, in a way, because it's so advancing cold outreach, it's actually destroying cold outreach. And so it's getting to a point where it's becoming so easy to personalize messages that we're going to ignore it, and
Right.
we are ignoring it. And it's not dead, but it's definitely taken a hit, and it will take more and more of a hit, in my opinion, which led me to ask myself, okay, so what should we do? Like, if this could happen with AI, it will happen with AI. Let's assume it already happened with AI, and how should we change? And the number one thing that came back to that question is communities.
Right.
Right? When people get AI bots to do cold outreach, they actually are looking for trust and people. And that means getting into communities and getting into face to face and building it that way. And I think Pavilion is doing an amazing job allowing you to scale while keeping trust within the community. So again, I'm new. I'm just starting to figure that out there, but we're starting to see really, really credible value there.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's really reinforced for me the importance of community. As we talked earlier about how pre-awareness content or pre-awareness activities become more important because you need to build trust with buyers beforehand because there's going to be less of that personal connection in a Zoom meeting or a phone call or whatever. But I think Pavilion does an interesting job modeling that just as a community element of how you can go about sort of building that awareness, building that trust, building that credibility. And it feels like something that companies could look to incorporate into their marketing approach.
100%. And we're doubling down this year on communities. We think this is really gonna get us the trust that we need, and place us, as a separate vendor from a competition on this one.
So are you encouraging each of your people, particularly salespeople, to be joining communities and be actively participating themselves?
Yeah, especially local communities.
Okay.
Right. So the more we can build trust, the more they know us. Again, it goes even back to the leadership question,
Right.
right? Customers want a vendor that will lead them to the solution.
Right.
If they trust, they will lead. If
Right.
they don't trust, they won't lead.
So trust is pervasive. We have to be able to trust our data. So we got to have accurate data. We have to have accurately qualified deals in the pipeline. We got to be able to trust leaders. As leaders, we have to trust the people working for us. We have to build trust with buyers and prospects. Feels like we're going to be talking a lot more about this over coming years as AI starts to kind of try to take over so many of the human interactions. That trust will become more important.
I had an interesting conversation with a researcher who requested to spend some time and talk about deepfakes. They wanted to get my take on what's happening, and I said, this is not a technology problem. This is, and the solution is not going to be a technology solution. We need to assume, this is exactly what I told him. I said, let's assume that 90% of all the content out there is deepfake.
Okay.
Okay, because if it could be, then it will be.
Right.
And so if we assume 90% of the content is deepfake, some of it might actually be deepfake we want. Okay. There's a great example of a reporter that got ALS, was diagnosed with ALS and had deteriorating ability to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point got a deep fake to replace him on the news. And he's an anchor, deep fake anchor on the news. And they're actually keeping him on the job,
Well,
right, as a deep fake. And so it completely changes our perspective on trust on deep fake, right? And so we need to redefine what trust is in the world of AI. And I think it's going to be, as you say, one of the top things to build.
so speaking of AI, what's your go-to resource for learning more about AI and changes in marketing and changes in sales? Are you going to podcasts or books, or are you just relying on community?
I'm relying a lot on community. We have researchers in-house that are constantly feeding us with information. One of their objectives is to constantly educate the company about AI. We have a whole channel in our Slack for AI education internally in the company, and that pulls from podcasts, from articles, from LinkedIn, from big AI vendors. But at the end of the day, there's no one source I would just name, but I would say establish a learning program internally about AI, because it's moving so fast in so many directions. If you just hone in on one source, it's not enough. So, but if you create a sort of a democratic channel,
Right.
where people can make the case to contribute content internally in the company, then you're building a continuously learning enterprise.
And on the marketing sales side, are there particular podcasts that you find good to listen to?
There are many. I think John McMahon has one, which I really like to listen to. Revenue Builders, which is amazing. I look to him as one of the biggest revenue builders. So Revenue Builders is one of my favorite ones.
And just out of curiosity, I always like asking, what speed do you listen at?
So I have a weird thing. I listen when I'm doing a chore. Right. So if I have a chore at home, I always listen, and when I go to sleep, and I actually fall asleep to podcasts.
Really?
So yeah. So when I'm awake and chore, I listen at 1.5, and when I lay down to sleep, at 1.
Got it.
I actually want to slow down.
Understand. Yeah, I typically listen to 1.5. It's funny. I haven't spoken to many people that have two different modes. People are normally 1 or 1.5.
It's just it's a completely different mode, right? One is grabbing information. The other one is slowing down,
Sure.
and just thinking into it.
Right. All right. Looking at your roadmap, anything that you're comfortable telling us about right now that you think is going to be really cool in how you're evolving to help teams? I mean, obviously you got more agents coming, but any sort of just a fundamental change that you anticipate?
Yeah. So we just released a beta of our debrief agent, and it's really mind blowing. So I showed it to a manager, and he said, "Oh shit, you're putting me out of a job." The idea is that you need to interact with your opportunity more and more through an agent that will listen, understand, and do things for you. And so we've created this debrief agent that allows you to just dump information on the agent. You can copy paste your notes. You can just sporadically tell them that you found out something about the opportunity, and the agent will take the debrief, parse it, update all the systems that need to get updated, and then immediately come back to you and say, "Okay, after I've updated, these are the core things you need to go focus on. Post your update." And so it immediately Coaches,
Well,
right? After the so it listens, it parses, it updates, and it immediately coaches. And the other side is let's say you're a first line manager or you're a rep that's about to go on a QBR, and you're going to be debriefed or debrief the audience. You can ask the agent to debrief you towards your QBR or towards your first line manager meeting and say, I'm about to go to my weekly meeting. What's the status of this opportunity and what's the most important things to mention? And you'll get a report on where the gaps are and what to mention. And so it's pretty mind blowing. We've created this agent. Agents are as good as, number one, the data that they have access to,
sure.
But number two, the data structure that they can access. Right, so it's not just the data, but it's the data structure that they can access as well. And because we have the unique model behind the Spotlight model around the playbook and value, the amount of things that we find out with the agent that we didn't even anticipate it could understand is pretty amazing.
Do you have an example?
I asked recently the agent, what's more important for me right now, to do X or to do Y in an opportunity? And the agent not just told me what's more important to do, but explained why, which I completely didn't anticipate, but it gave full reasoning of why. Part of the reasoning was the pattern it saw in the opportunity, and the other was historic opportunities that he saw that with the same pattern and the wins and losses that he saw. So mind blowing. I literally, you're amazed at how smart these things can get in reasoning, running on the right data structure.
Wow, that's interesting. All right, I'm going to drop your LinkedIn profile and your website link into the show notes. How should people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about Spotlight AI or just kind of absorb your insights?
Yeah, so on our website, ask for a demo or a meeting. We'll get back to you immediately and set a meeting. It's pretty easy. And LinkedIn, I'm pretty much on top of my LinkedIn messages and always happy to help to others that want any sounding board help as much as I can with limited time. Obviously, I try to be transparent on what I can do and not do.
Right. Real quick, your ICP, the perfect fit for Spotlight based on where you are in the roadmap right now?
Any company that is selling a value proposition, not a complete commodity, but something of value, with a sales cycle of more than a month, right? With more than 10 reps, so that there's an initial operational complexity. It could go up to hundreds of reps, right? With a sales cycle of, as I said, more than a month. So usually, average sales price of dozens of thousands to millions.
Right. Got it. All right. Finish us up. Give us 3 minutes, 2, 3, 4 minutes, whatever it takes. What do people need to understand about deal qualification, and how is AI going to impact marketing and sales going forward?
Always look for what's missing, not for what you've achieved. That's the number one. That's the number we talked about. That number one thing. Ask, why is this deal not going to happen? Don't ask, why is it going to happen? Okay, that's number one. And AI will get better and better and more sophisticated, and also everywhere, not just in your CRM,
sure,
but on your phone, on your text, and everywhere you are, in understanding why those gaps appear, what are those gaps, and what you should do about them.
So fundamentally, from a mindset perspective, you're a proponent of constantly qualifying out rather than qualifying in. Is that fair?
Constantly.
Okay.
You qualify in when you have the PO.
Or qualifying in is back to those happy years. So always be qualifying out.
Always be qualifying, and always ask, why am I going to lose this? What is the one thing I'm missing in this deal that's going to block me? And
right.
that keeps you in the right mindset.
Perfect. Well, this has been fabulous, Roi. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for sharing your insights.
Thank you, Ed. It's been fun.
And for everyone listening, please remember, like, share, comment.